Now, let's talk about this story. The U.S. Embassy releasing a somewhat vague notice just the other day, informing its staff of a possible terrorist attack on Saturday, the 29th of October in the Sandton area of Johannesburg. Meanwhile, the president has called this alert unfortunate. Our senior reporter, Aviwe Mtila, is on that story today. He's been on the ground speaking to various role players in Sandton. Good afternoon, Aviwe. You've spoken to business owners, you've spoken to people who own restaurants, you've spoken to some patrons. What's the sentiment about this terror threat advisory by the U.S. Embassy?
Good afternoon, Dan. And as much as they're trying to remain as vigilant as possible, they're also trying to continue with business as normal. In fact, I spoke to the co-owner of Papa's on the Square, one of the restaurants in Africa's Golden Square Mall, of course, in Sandton City, where he suggested that not much has actually changed since that U.S. Embassy notice on the possible terrorist attack over the weekend. They're saying that business has been flowing as normally as possible, and they're not seeing much difference even in their revenue from yesterday and the day before, but they'll say they see how they fare then. We also saw patrons ourselves going in and out. They're saying that, in fact, the security has been heightened in Sandton City, and in fact, security also being heightened in and around the area. But he says that he is a bit concerned of the actual announcement by the U.S. government, suggesting that in previous years there hasn't been a real threat of South Africa being on the terrorist list, but they are vigilant nonetheless, while they'll continue with business as normal over the weekend. In fact, a conversation that I had with Charles de Olem, the owner of Papa's on the Square. Let's take a listen to that.
You know, it's like when someone cries wolf, you can't necessarily ignore that, because these things are, you can't be taken lightly. It is unfortunate. It's the end of the month again. We're going into peak season. Sandton is sort of the hub of business in Johannesburg. But I think it's a tough position to kind of ignore. But at the same time, I think you've got to just be, use your sort of your own. I guess you've got to kind of like weigh it up yourself, and look at the kind of global politics and where we're at the moment. And I don't think South Africa is necessarily on the terror sort of list, if you could say that. But like I said, you've got to take these things into consideration, and you've got to be cautious, I guess.
And I understand you also spoke to some patrons, Aviwe. I'm sure amid the heightened vigilance that you have mentioned, there must be some concerns, or are people pretty much relaxed at this stage?
Well, but Dan, judging by the patrons themselves, you can expect a lot of them to be in and around Sandton over the weekend. You do understand there is a gay pride over the weekend. There is a number of activities. I understand there's a wine tasting festival also that'll be happening. And those patrons suggest that, in fact, they're happy that they've seen this visible security in and around the African Golden Square Mall. In fact, I want to step out of shot as my colleague Joel Matlala just shows you some of the activity around. As you can see, quite normal in and around the streets of Sandton here. People moving on their business as per usual. You'd understand it's the end of the month where you'd expect a lot of business to be happening. A lot of these businesses around the Square Mall itself are expecting a lot of customers at this time, and they hope, in fact, the businesses themselves, that it won't be dampened by the terrorist alerts that they've come to know from the U.S. Embassy. In fact, I want you to take a listen to one of the patrons of Papa's, the restaurant that we visited a bit earlier on how he feels just on what may possibly happen over the weekend.
Currently, we've seen a lot of security around, heightened security on the inn, so I feel pretty safe coming here. I think that we can't be scared the whole time about somebody's hidden agendas. So I'll definitely be here tomorrow.